Whenever there is the discussion about the world's most profitable company, the only name that comes to your mind must be Apple. However, there's a company that has surpassed Apple as the most valuable company in the world. That is Saudi Aramco. It is the world's most powerful oil company and one of the world's largest oil producers, supplying more than 10% of global oil demand. Aramco is in charge of managing 98% of Saudi Arabia's oil reserves, which account for 25% of total global oil reserves. So join us today on our discussion on the Saudi Aramco's history, its revenue, as well as its role in Saudi Arabia's economy. Saudi Aramco, also known as Saudi Arabian Oil Company and formerly Arabian American Oil Company, was founded in 1933 by the Standard Oil Company of California, Chevron, when the Saudi government granted it a concession. Aramco discovered the first offshore oil field in the Middle East in 1951. Its control gradually passed to the Saudi Arabian government in the 1970s and 1980s, which eventually took over Aramco and renamed it as Saudi Aramco in 1988, and it was fully made a state-owned company. The company has its headquarters in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, but its operations span the globe. Saudi Aramco operates ventures in the petrochemical industry. It is in charge of several refineries, international oil markets, and Saudi domestic oil distribution. The company also owns several fleets of oil tankers and a refinery distribution network. The company is involved in hydrocarbon exploration, production, refining, distribution, shipping, and marketing. It also produces and exports crude oil and natural gas liquids, as well as petrochemical products. In terms of exploration, the company has 104 oil fields and 285 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves. Moreover, Saudi Aramco's fields include Gwahar and Shebaa, which are among the world's largest oil fields. Saudi Aramco produces 3.4 billion barrels of petroleum per year. It is in charge of 264 billion barrels of oil reserves and 253 quadrillion standard cubic feet of natural gas. Moreover, it produces approximately 10.3 million barrels per day, which is more than double the output of its closest competitor, Rosneft, a Russian government-owned producer. It ships oil mainly to North America, Europe, and Asia. China, India, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan are among its top Asian customers. Almost three-quarters of Aramco's crude exports, which are about 5.2 million BPD, were delivered to customers in Asia last year. Furthermore, the same year, it delivered more than 1 million barrels per day to North America and 864,000 barrels per day to Europe. The oil company has made numerous improvements over the last 8 decades and has grown to become one of the world's largest incorporated energy enterprises. It now intends to acquire a chemical company, transforming Aramco into one of the world's largest chemical producers. If we talk about Saudi Aramco's position in the country as well as around the globe, the 80-year-old state corporation is the world's most profitable and valuable corporation. Since its establishment, it has consistently been recognized as the leading oil producer in the world. This ranking is based on the size of its reserves, oil and natural gas output, refining capacity, volume of sales, net income, and asset base. The company has access to 52 years' worth of proven reserves and extracts oil at a lower cost than any other Western energy company. Saudi Aramco's reserves are estimated to be the largest ever held by an oil company. Furthermore, the company owns and operates the Master Gas System (MGS), which is critical in ensuring the country's fuel and gas self-sufficiency. MGS is also one of the world's largest exporters of gas liquids. Similarly, Saudi Aramco undeniably provides the Saudi government and state with leverage in international politics as well. Now coming towards its importance for Saudi Arabia. It is unusual for a country's fate to be determined by the fortunes of a single corporation, but such is the case with Saudi Arabia and Aramco. As we know that Saudi economy is heavily dependent on its oil and gas reserves, since the petroleum sector accounts for 40% of Saudi Arabia's GDP, and oil accounts for 85% of Saudi exports and 70% of total government revenue. So, this is entirely governed by Saudi Aramco and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. Saudi Arabia is attempting to diversify its economy and sees its strategic and energy future as centered on becoming a global economic and energy power. Here, Aramco has played an important role in the development of Saudi Arabia's economy and is preparing to complete this mission by helping to shape the kingdom's future. Saudi Aramco also plays an important role in Saudi Arabia's society. The most important aspect of its mission is to perform a redistributive function in the management of the kingdom's oil reserves and assets. The company subsidizes the domestic fuel supplies as an act to benefit the consumers and the domestic industries. The majority of its local suppliers are run by Aramco alumni. It is also the primary employer and offers training to Saudi workers, as 87% of the company's 51,000 employees are Saudi nationals, with employee growth of 4.5% annually. This makes it clear that the company is the heart of Saudi Arabia's economy, as well as society as a whole. Now, let's take a look at Saudi Aramco's revenue and profitability. It is no doubt the country's business crown jewel and the world's largest oil producer, pumping about 10% of the global supply. Saudi Aramco generates its own operating revenue. The company receives funds for its expansion and investment programs from the kingdom's Ministry of Finance. Moreover, it has increased the capital expenditure by roughly half to between $40 and $50 billion for 2022, with further growth expected until the middle of the decade. The state-owned oil company's capital expenditure in 2021 was just under $32 billion, an 18% increase over 2020. Saudi Aramco has retained the top spot in terms of revenue, and it has experienced an unprecedented profit due to an increase in its revenues in the organization of Islamic conferences. However, the revenue has mainly increased due to increased demand for oil, particularly from the East Asian region. Saudi Aramco's total estimated worth is $2 trillion at the high end and anywhere between $1.5 trillion and $500 billion at the low end. For comparison, the GDP of the United Kingdom is $2.619 trillion in 2016. Now there is an important point that I want to highlight here, that climate change is causing energy systems to shift. Between 1992 and 2017, Saudi Aramco, the world's most profitable corporation, released more than 40 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases, the equivalent of nearly 5% of industrial carbon dioxide and methane emissions. The company, which is closely held by the Saudi royal family, is now confronting the challenges of climate change in a manner similar to that of many Western fossil fuel behemoths. By embarking on a rebranding campaign that positions the company as an environmental leader, Saudi Aramco intends to work on ways to pump more clean fuel while reducing greenhouse gas emissions in order to compete as governments tighten carbon regulations. In July 2019, Saudi Aramco joined a World Bank-led initiative to end the practice of routinely burning or flaring unwanted gas during oil production by 2030. Saudi Aramco's Hawiyah gas plant has a carbon capture project that it claims captures 30 million standard cubic feet of CO2 per day. The CO2 captured is pumped into an oil field for enhanced oil recovery or extracting more oil. Moreover, Saudi Arabia is investing billions of dollars in green energy and has set a net zero target for 2060. However, in reality, there appears to be a major contradiction for the biggest oil power. Saudi Aramco is also working on ways to increase its production capacity in order to pump as much of Saudi Arabia's vast oil reserves as possible when demand rises, before a shift to cleaner energy renders crude virtually worthless. In fact, there is growing concern that Saudi Aramco is pursuing a short-term strategy of aggressively exploiting oil fields, maximizing short-term revenues at the expense of long-term value, because the truth is, a shift to lower carbon intensity fossil fuels, such as gas or alternative energy sources, is good for the environment but bad for oil companies and those who invest in them. In their defense, despite Saudi Aramco producing 4.38% of the world's carbon emissions since 1965, drilling a barrel of Saudi oil produces significantly fewer emissions than other producers, half that produced in the United States. To date, policies such as carbon taxes and stricter energy efficiency standards do not appear to be having a significant impact on Saudi Aramco's operations. Moreover, there is little public pressure for climate action within the kingdom. Hence, Saudi Aramco will continue to extract oil and develop its gas resources in response to rising domestic demand, as well as the kingdom's ambitions to become a top gas exporter. If you found this video informative and enjoyed the content, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.